My niece called me crying. My brother told her I wasn't allowed to visit anymore. Said I was a bad influence. So I showed up to her birthday with no gift. Just a document. One she handed to her mom, in front of everyone. My name is Nathan. I'm 36 years old, single, and until recently, I thought I was a pretty good uncle. I'm not a perfect man. I don't own a house. I bounce between freelance graphic work and odd teaching gigs, and I'll probably never have a retirement plan. But there's one thing I've never doubted in my life. My relationship with my niece, Lily. She's 13 now. Smart, sarcastic, ridiculously creative. The kind of kid who doodles dragons in her math notebook and knows more about Greek mythology than most adults. For years, every other weekend, she'd come hang out at my apartment. We'd build ridiculous Lego cities, watch old Studio Ghibli films, and she'd absolutely destroy me at board games I taught her myself. She called me Uncle Nate the Great. I called her Tiny Chaos. But 3 weeks ago, everything shifted, in a way I still can't shake. It started with a phone call. Saturday morning. I was microwaving leftover curry and halfway through putting socks on when my phone buzzed. Lily's name popped up. I smiled, already imagining her asking if she could come over and paint. But when I picked up, all I heard was her breathing. Not normal breathing. Shaky. Silent sobs. Then her voice came through, barely audible. Dad said, "You can't come anymore." I froze, hand still on the sock. What? What are you talking about? He said you're a bad influence, she said, her voice breaking like glass. A bad? What does that even mean? He said, you make me think I don't need rules. That you're undermining him. He said I'm not allowed to call you anymore. That last sentence made something in my chest snap, like a tight wire breaking. I sat down on the edge of my bed, completely thrown off. Lily started crying harder. Did I do something wrong? Are you mad at me? I wanted to teleport through the phone, wrap her up in a hug. But instead, all I could say was, no. No, sweetheart. This has nothing to do with you. You didn't do anything wrong. Okay. I could hear her nodding, then the muffled sound of her mom in the background. Lily, time for chores. And just like that, she was gone. I sat there in silence for at least 10 minutes, staring at my cracked phone screen, trying to process what the hell just happened. I hadn't had a single fight with my brother, Ben. No passive-aggressive texts. No weirdness at the last family dinner. Everything had seemed normal. So I did what any confused and slightly pissed off younger brother would do. I called him. Straight to voicemail. I called again. And again. On the 4th try, he picked up. What do you want? That's how he answered. Not hey. Not what's up. Just flat. What do you want? I tried to stay calm. Lily just called me crying. What the hell is going on? There was a pause. Then he sighed like I'd just dropped a huge burden on him. She's getting older. You don't have kids, so you wouldn't understand. But she needs structure. Authority. You let her run wild. Wild. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Ben, she painted a mural on my living room wall. That's not wild, that's creative. You're mad because she thinks for herself. She's too young to think for herself. And you keep putting ideas in her head. That she can talk back. That she can question me. I didn't say anything for a moment. Just sat there, letting his words hang. Then I said, you're afraid of a teenager having boundaries. Ben's voice turned cold. You're not welcome at our house anymore. I don't want her around you. And if you care about her, you'll stay away. Click. I didn't even realize I'd thrown my phone until it skidded across the floor. Here's the thing. Ben and I were never close. He's 5 years older, always the golden child. Got the scholarship, the job, the house, the perfect family. I was the one who floated. The one who wasted his potential. But we'd never fought like this. And this wasn't just a fight. This was exile. I sat on that thought all day, tried to distract myself, with work, laundry, even scrubbing the bathroom grout. But nothing helped. Every time I looked at the couch where Lily used to curl up with my cat, I felt that emptiness spread. By the evening, I wasn't just angry. I was suspicious. Because Ben wasn't just being protective. He was scared. He sounded like a man trying to shut down a leak, before the truth poured out. So I started digging. After that call with Ben, something in my gut kept buzzing. Not like anger, not even grief. More like a low-level alarm that wouldn't shut off. Because this wasn't just over a parenting disagreement. He cut me out entirely. Cold. Like I was a threat. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized maybe he thought I was. Not to her safety, but to his control. I spent that night walking through memories like a detective on his first case, trying to retrace the trail. I remembered the day Lily asked me what a gray divorce was. She was 10. When I asked her why she was asking, she whispered. I heard Mom crying on the phone. She said she feels invisible. Then she quickly added, don't tell Dad I told you. Or that time I picked her up from school, and she panicked when I said we could grab burgers before dropping her off. Can we not be late? He gets weird if I mess up the schedule. That phrase, he gets weird. I'd brushed it off as a strict parent thing. I shouldn't have. The more I looked back, the more I saw it. Little puzzle pieces I'd ignored because I'd been trained, like all of us in our family, to think silence was safer than confrontation. I called our mom. She was folding laundry when she answered, sounding chipper until I said, "It's about Lily." Her voice dipped. "What about her?" I told her everything. The phone call, the ban, what Ben said. She sighed, not surprised, not confused, just tired. "You know how your brother is." That was always the line. Anytime Ben threw a tantrum as a kid. Anytime he shouted at his wife in front of us during family holidays. "You know how Ben is." I pushed. "Mom, did you ever notice how scared she looks when he's around?" There was silence. Then, "Nathan, it's not our place." That sentence punched the breath right out of me. Not our place. I used to believe that. That staying out of other people's marriages, other people's homes, was polite, respectful. But Lily wasn't an adult. She was a kid. A kid who confided in me, trusted me. And now, that same kid was being told she couldn't talk to me anymore. Why? What was Ben afraid she'd tell me? I remembered something from last year. It had been raining, and we were stuck inside, so I gave her my laptop to draw on. She ended up writing a poem instead. When she left, she asked if I could save her writing somewhere. I did, in a folder I hadn't opened since. I pulled out my old backup drive, dusted it off, plugged it in. There it was, tiny chaos journal.docs. My throat tightened. I opened the file. The first few entries were sweet, clumsy, full of tween rage and jokes. One about how she wanted to dye her hair green like a forest witch. Another about how her cat, Moonbeam, was the only soul who got her. And then, one entry stopped me cold. "Today Dad said I talk too much. He said my ideas are stupid." I tried not to cry, but he called me dramatic and said Mom was already enough of that in the house. "I think he hates girls. I think maybe he hates me." I kept reading. I told Uncle Nate I want to make comics one day. He said he can help me. Dad said artists are broke losers. He said if I draw in class again, he's taking the sketchbook. So I hide it in my closet now. Then one that made my stomach flip. He found my drawings. He tore them. He said if I want to act like a rebellious brat, he'll treat me like one. I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the sound of paper ripping. I don't want to be here anymore. I leaned back. My eyes were burning. I wasn't just banned because I was a bad influence. I was banned because I believed her. Because I gave her space to breathe. And that space, that freedom, was a threat to his power. I needed help. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I called a therapist. Not for me. For Lily. I didn't give names. I just described the situation. A girl, 13, possibly experiencing emotional and psychological abuse. Father is authoritarian. Mother is passive. Girl has shown signs of isolation and distress. The therapist was quiet. Then she said something that hit like a sledgehammer. When a parent cuts off a safe adult from a child's life, it's often because that adult sees what's happening. She told me to document everything. Every journal. Every drawing. Every email. Keep records. And if things escalated, I could file for a request for guardianship review. Or at the very least, initiate a welfare inquiry. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't just about me and Ben. This was about a girl who believed she didn't matter unless she was silent. So I messaged a lawyer the next morning. And I waited. The lawyer called me back 2 days later. Her name was Carla. Straight-talking, mid-40s, zero time for small talk. I gave her everything. The journal entries, the timestamps on emails Lily had sent me over the years, and the summary of my call with the therapist. She asked for context. I gave her the last decade of our family's history, the golden child dynamic, the cracks I had ignored, the way Ben could switch from charming to venomous if he felt challenged. Carla didn't blink. "This isn't going to be easy," she said. "But if what you're describing is accurate, we may have grounds to file for an emergency family court review. At minimum, we can raise red flags that force oversight." I asked what that meant. She said it could start with an anonymous report or progress toward a temporary custody hearing, if the mother cooperates. That's where things got tricky. Because Lily's mom, my sister-in-law Jenna, was always a bit of a ghost in the family. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't warm. She was absent in spirit. You could talk to her for an hour and still feel like she wasn't in the room. But I'd seen enough over the years to know she was exhausted. Ben wore her down, too. So the plan had to be precise. No drama. No firebomb. Just truth, revealed at the exact right moment. And then fate handed me the opening. That Sunday, I got something in the mail. Not an email. Not a text. A literal envelope. Inside was a folded piece of notebook paper, wide-ruled, with faint marker stains and a tiny dragon doodle in the corner. It was from Lily. "Uncle Nate. Dad doesn't know I'm sending this. I had to hide it in the mailbox before school. Please come to my birthday. I don't care if you bring anything. Just be there. I feel safer when you're around." She ended the note with a crooked smiley face. It looked rushed, like she was afraid she'd get caught drawing it. Her birthday was in 6 days. A small family party, usually just the grandparents, a couple neighbors, some other kids from school. I hadn't been invited, obviously, but Lily was asking me, begging really. And the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. It had to happen there. Carla drafted the petition in under 48 hours. It wasn't just a complaint. It was a full summary of concern for the emotional well-being of a minor, with multiple entries logged, supporting documents attached, and an official request for family court review under this psychological endangerment clause of our state's domestic law. I read it over and over. The wording was cold, precise, but it hit hard. I printed it on thick, white paper, folded it cleanly, slid it into an envelope. No frills, no wrapping. And then I showed up to the party. I wore my nicest button-up, the one Lily once said made me look like a professor on TV. I didn't bring a gift. No card. No balloon. Just that envelope in my inside jacket pocket. The party was already in full swing when I got there. Kids running around the yard. Pop music playing from a Bluetooth speaker. One of the neighborhood dads trying to keep up with a piñata full of sour candy. Ben saw me first. His face turned a color I didn't know skin could manage. He started moving toward me, but before he could say anything, Lily broke through the crowd. She ran toward me, faster than I expected, and threw her arms around my waist. Nate. I hugged her, carefully, like I was holding something fragile. Ben was 10 feet away now, barking. You weren't invited. But Lily didn't let go. I knelt down and whispered, I didn't bring a present, but I do have something important. I pulled the envelope from my jacket. I need you to hand this to your mom, right now, and do it where everyone can see. She took it, eyes wide. Then she turned and walked back toward Jenna, who was setting down a tray of cupcakes. The yard felt like it froze. Conversations went quiet as Lily handed her mother the envelope. Ben kept walking toward me, jaw clenched. Jenna opened the envelope. She started reading. 30 seconds in, her hand went to her mouth. Ben turned toward her. What is it? She didn't answer, just kept reading. Ben grabbed the paper from her hand, yanked it, actually, scanned it. His head snapped toward me. You've got to be kidding me. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. Just stood there while his face contorted. You sick little. But he didn't get to finish. Because Lily, who had never raised her voice in front of anyone, turned around and said, loud and clear, stop. Everyone turned to her. Even the music cut out. I asked him to come, she said, pointing at me. I asked him because I don't feel safe when you scream all the time. Ben's mouth dropped open. You think you can embarrass me like this? In front of my family. Lily didn't back down. You do that all by yourself. The yard was dead silent after Lily spoke. Kids stopped running. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Even the Bluetooth speaker gave up and died, leaving nothing but the buzz of a nearby lawnmower in the distance. Ben didn't yell. Not immediately. He just stood there, face bright red, holding that folded court document like it was poison. Jenna, his wife, Lily's mom, was still frozen, one hand to her mouth, the other clenched at her side. Her eyes weren't on Ben anymore. They were on Lily. And Lily, bless this kid, didn't back down. She stood there in her green birthday dress, shoes scuffed, curls slightly windblown from the yard games, looking up at her father like she'd finally drawn a line he couldn't cross. That line, truth. Ben snapped first. He turned on me, voice low and venomous. You've been planning this? Behind my back? I didn't answer. Didn't move. He pointed at the envelope, now limp in Jenna's hand. What the hell is this supposed to be? Jenna finally spoke. It's a court request. From Nathan. About Lily's mental and emotional safety. Ben laughed. Or something like a laugh. Short, cold, guttural. You've lost your mind. Then he looked at Lily again. Go inside. She didn't move. He took a step forward. I said, don't. Jenna said sharply, cutting through him like a blade. He stopped. Shocked. I'd never heard that tone from her. Ever. She stepped in front of Lily, shielding her slightly. Her voice was calm, controlled, but it carried an edge none of us had heard before. Don't speak to her like that. Not right now. Not here. Ben looked at the neighbors, the kids, the entire crowd watching him unravel. You could see it all on his face, the gears spinning. How do you control this? Spin this? Walk it back without looking weak. But there was no way to frame this scene in his favor. A teenage daughter confronting him. A silent brother standing nearby with court paperwork. A wife no longer keeping quiet. And every eye watching. He barked, we'll talk about this inside. But Jenna didn't move. No. You don't get to drag her away and shut the door like you always do. That sentence landed like a thunderclap, like a match hitting dry leaves. Everyone heard it. Everyone knew what it meant, even if they didn't know the history behind it. Ben looked at her like she'd just betrayed him for the first time. But the truth was, this wasn't the first betrayal. It was just the first public one. He spun around and stormed toward the house, muttering something about lawyers and crazy family. I didn't follow him. Neither did Jenna. And Lily? She stayed outside, holding onto Jenna's hand like it was a lifeline. After a few awkward minutes, the party tried to resume. Kids hesitantly went back to the candy. Adults whispered. One of the neighbor moms approached Jenna and offered to take some of the kids home early. Jenna nodded. As the yard cleared out, Jenna walked over to me. Not angry, not shaken, just tired. I didn't know it had gotten that bad, she said. I knew he was strict. I knew he was cold. But I didn't know what he said to her when I wasn't in the room. I said nothing. Just let the moment breathe. She looked down at the document in her hand. Is this really something that can help? Yes, I said. If you're willing to speak honestly. She nodded. Then, quietly, I think I am. Lily was sitting on the porch steps now, arms wrapped around her knees, watching us. Jenna turned and looked at her, and then back at me. Thank you, she whispered. Then, something I didn't expect. She took a deep breath and said, he always said she gets her stubbornness from me. Maybe he was right. I just forgot how to use mine. That was the first time I realized Jenna wasn't broken. She'd just been buried. The Monday after Lily's birthday, the court received the petition. Carla, my lawyer, confirmed it was being reviewed by a family court judge. She said that under normal conditions, it could take weeks to get a hearing date, but with Jenna now listed as a willing co-complainant, the timeline could move much faster. That meant one thing. Ben no longer had total control of the story. I hadn't seen him since the party. But according to Jenna, he packed a duffel bag that night, slammed the door behind him, and stayed at his brother-in-law's house 2 towns over. I half expected him to come back swinging. With threats, manipulation, maybe some PR spin about me being mentally unstable or jealous of his family. But the opposite happened. He went quiet. And that, honestly, scared me more. Jenna and I kept in close contact for the next several days. She started taking Lily to therapy sessions, not just for her, but for both of them. She said at first, Lily barely spoke in the sessions. Just looked down and picked at the corner of her sleeve. But on day 3, that changed. Lily brought the journal. The real one. Not the scanned pages I'd saved from a year ago, but the full, tattered thing, filled cover to cover with drawings, letters to imaginary friends, and entries she never meant for anyone to read. And at the end of that session, the therapist asked her a simple question. If you could say one thing to your dad, and know he'd hear you, what would it be? Lily thought for a long time. Then she said, you treat love like a prize you give away when I'm useful, and take back when I'm not. That quote shook me. Jenna told me over the phone that the therapist actually had to pause after Lily said it. She said it like it was just obvious, Jenna said. Like she'd rehearsed it 100 times in her head. I think she had. Later that week, the judge signed the order to temporarily suspend Ben's full custodial control, pending an evaluation. That meant Jenna now had the authority to make independent decisions on Lily's behalf, including therapy, school matters, and communication with relatives. It also meant Ben had to attend court-mandated parenting sessions if he wanted custody back. He was livid. He left a voicemail on my phone, the only direct contact since the party. He said, you think this is over? You just blew up your own family. I didn't reply, because it wasn't over. Not yet. But something had changed. Lily came over that Saturday. For the first time in nearly a month, she sat in the same spot on my couch where she used to sketch imaginary creatures and watch anime with her feet curled under a blanket. But she didn't bring her markers this time. She brought a folder. Inside were 6 pages, photocopies. At the top of each was a date. These are from school, she said. I started saving the stuff he made me rewrite. I looked at them. Essays, worksheets, even an apology letter. All corrected in sharp, angry handwriting. You're not allowed to say I feel unless you follow it with something rational. This sentence is useless. No one cares about your emotions. Rewrite this and sound less weak. I couldn't speak. She pointed to one note at the bottom of a poem she'd written. Poetry is for quitters and soft people. You'll never make a living off sadness. She said, he used to take my notebooks. I thought if I made them look more like him, he'd stop yelling. I said, did he ever hit you? She shook her head. No, but sometimes I wished he had. That stopped me. She must have seen my reaction because she added quickly, at least if he did, someone would have noticed. That sentence felt like a quiet scream. It took everything in me not to break down in front of her. But I stayed still. I let her speak. She told me how she used to rehearse silence. How she'd practice responses that wouldn't upset him. How she once spent 45 minutes standing in front of a mirror, trying to say, can I go to my friend's house? In the calmest, least threatening tone possible. How she cried once in front of him when he canceled her art camp. And he told her, this is why I never wanted a daughter. Too much drama. I asked her, what do you want now? She didn't even pause. I want him to know I'm not scared anymore. And then she added something else, quietly, almost under her breath. I want him to hear my voice and not recognize it. 3 weeks after Lily's birthday, I found myself sitting on a bench outside the county family court building. The sky was overcast, the kind of gray that makes the whole day feel like it's holding its breath. Inside that building, a lot was about to happen. It wasn't a full custody trial, not yet, but a formal review hearing. A judge would read the petition. Both Jenna and Ben would speak. So would the therapist. And depending on how things went, Lily might be asked to testify. She was given the choice. She said yes. I wasn't allowed in the room. Only Jenna, Ben, their lawyers, and the court-appointed child advocate. But I didn't need to hear what happened to understand what it meant. Because when Jenna walked out an hour later, she didn't look crushed. She looked free. She came straight over and hugged me. Not a side hug. Not a polite gesture. A real one. Then she stepped back and said, "They're going forward with the shared custody suspension. He's only allowed supervised visits for now, until he completes 6 parenting courses and passes a behavioral eval." "And Lily?" I asked. She turned and gestured. Lily stepped out of the building, her hair braided down the sides, her sketchbook tucked under one arm. She didn't run to me. She didn't cry. She just smiled, tired but real, and said, "Guess what?" I finally said it to his face. I raised an eyebrow. "Said what?" She lifted her sketchbook, flipped to the first page. It was a new one, blank, except for a sentence written in her favorite green marker. "I am not a broken version of you." Then she looked up and added, "And you know what?" He didn't say anything back. He just blinked, like he didn't know who I was. I laughed a little, not out of joy, but out of awe, because in that moment, I realized she'd already won. This wasn't about court orders or visitation rights. It wasn't even about getting Ben out of the way. It was about Lily knowing she could speak and be heard, that she didn't have to erase herself to survive. A week later, she came back to my place for a sleepover, the first one in almost 2 months. We didn't do anything dramatic. She made pancakes. We watched some old animated movie. She showed me a character she'd been drawing in secret, a girl with antlers and battle armor and a soft, glowing lantern that she carried through dark forests. I asked if it was her. She shrugged. "Kind of, but stronger. She doesn't flinch." Later that night, after she'd fallen asleep on the couch with Moonbeam curled on her chest, I opened my phone and scrolled through the old messages, the ones I'd saved from her over the years. There was one she sent me last year. I must have missed it or forgotten. It just said, "Sometimes I feel like you're the only grown-up in the world who doesn't talk over me." I sat with that, and then I thought about something Jenna had said the day after the party. He always told her she was too loud. You were the first one who told her that her voice mattered. Maybe that's all it takes. Not big speeches. Not heroic rescues. Just listening. Just staying. Just handing her the mic when no one else would. So what happened to Ben? From what I know, he did enroll in the parenting courses, eventually. Probably to avoid legal fallout. But he's still under review. And more importantly, everyone knows now. My mom. The neighbors. Even his boss. That last one. Jenna didn't even plan. Apparently, his supervisor overheard one of his meltdowns on a Zoom call, yelling off camera about family traitors. Human resources got involved. Let's just say the image he built, it cracked. He hasn't called me. Not once. And that's fine. Because last night, Lily handed me a letter before she left. Folded into a paper dragon. Inside, she wrote, "Thank you for not bringing a present to my birthday. You brought something better. You brought me back. I don't know what I'll be to her when she's 25 or 30 or someday helping her own kids figure out who they are. But I do know this. When she finally found her voice, I gotta be the one listening. And I'll never stop." And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day, and trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.